What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability?
Well, I think that one of the most interesting things about me is how uninteresting my life was as a youth. How much I transformed from being raised in a conservative Catholic family in Connecticut to now doing this, and how it all just sort of started happening. I woke up somewhere around the year 2000. I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but once it happened, I just went down the path, like with everything. Getting Reiki certified and reading all these books, and then eventually starting to follow Abraham around the world and going to workshops and doing cruises and stuff. And then all of a sudden the channeling started to happen. But I went from being like a strict Catholic, where as a teenager I would drive myself to church, to going complete atheist in my college years. And then just all of a sudden, spirituality found me. I wasn't looking for answers. I I kind of was just resigned to the fact that when we die, we'll just go in the ground. And I felt terrible when I thought about it, so I just didn't think about it. And then, all of a sudden, I was just like handed these Tony Robbins CDs, and the very last one was an interview with Deepak Chopra. And I really was aligned with Deepak in so many ways because he was into natural healing. And I had discovered being raw and vegan once I moved to LA. So I was really into that lifestyle of like, hey, you don't need to go to a doctor. You don't need drugs over the counter or pharmaceutical to be healthy and well. So that's what appealed to me about him. And then like just reading his books and stuff, I discovered, wow, I really do live in an intelligent universe that obviously there's a purpose to all this. And, it just, his like scientific way of explaining things really was what I needed to wake up. So I got exactly what I needed from Deepak, and then I just took it and ran from there and eventually got into channeling.
Okay, now you mentioned there that you had a pretty Catholic kind of upbringing as well. So how have your family taken the path that you're on right now?
They accept it. They don't try to talk me out of it. If any of them are worried, they don't say it, you know. But I'd say out of my main family, my family I grew up in, my dad is probably the most open to it. He likes James Van Praagh, um, who you should probably interview at some point. Yeah, he likes him, and so he understands mediumship. But and he's like sort of dabbled in new agey things. But yeah, I think my mom realizes that she's psychic, and she started to get into new agey stuff. And the story that this is a long time ago, and she got totally turned off by it when she saw that the Holy Spirit was referred to in something that was written, and the H and the S were not capitalized, and that was it for her. She threw it away.
You, if you was going to go to a family do, then it would still be, pleasant and everyone's still
Yeah,
getting on. Yeah, that's important.
they might tease me, but my wife and I just yesterday were like teasing them, about how like Christian they can be at times. So I realized that after we had that like really good laugh about it, that like, oh, they tease me about the fifth dimension and that sort of stuff, and like not really getting what I'm channeling because they can see it on Facebook and stuff. So I guess that's just the give and take of the universe. Until I am able to fully accept and respect what they believe, then they'll probably never fully do that for me either.
Interesting. So there was a fear then, a fear of religion, even though that was your practicing thing back in the day.
I was afraid of God. I was afraid of not being good enough, of disappointing God, of saying the wrong thing, even thinking the wrong thing. So that was my initiation into a source type being when I was a child. Was just it was like, I remember my mom or dad saying to me, if you don't clean up your room, then Santa's not going to bring you presents. And I remember thinking, I don't know how I got this thought in my head, but like elves, like Santa's elves, like beating me up, you know? And that was kind of like my relationship with all of the ones who control the goodies of, the universe, is like, you better not disappoint them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people go through some sort of fear. Probably gets them into the realm of looking into the idea of, am I more than my body? Is there something far greater that I've always been and always will be? And
Yeah.
I suppose that starts the, an individual's spiritual journey.
Yeah, hopefully. I think it's interesting too. One of the things that you and I kind of discussed briefly was your interview with Dolores Cannon, or one of them that I stumbled upon on YouTube, and that's what got us talking again about doing this. And so I've been listening to her on Audible, because I listened to as many YouTube clips of her as I could and realized, well, she's just saying the same thing over and over again. I got to listen to one of these books. So I've been listening to the Convoluted Universe thing, and just today I was listening to the part where the beings that she's talking to through the client is saying, there's no punishment. Like you're never going to be punished. If you do go to some sort of like purgatory or some kind of experience like that, it's because you want to have that experience.
Yeah, we create our own reality. That's so important, isn't it?
Even after death, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, do you think we create our own reality on this level?
We do. It's just not the ego all the time. So the ego, sometimes the ego wants this, and the higher self knows this is better. And then sometimes they converge, and that's wonderful. You get what you want and what you need at the same time. But sometimes what you want is not actually going to serve you, not even in terms of the egoic aspect of you getting served. In other words, you, me, probably everybody who's watching this has wanted to be in a relationship with someone who we didn't wind up getting in the relationship with. And it was like you dodged a complete bullet, or the person who was perfect for you came along, months later, and then thank God you were single.
Yeah. Or, you go into a relationship that's completely destructive, but that's what you needed.
Exactly. I had one of those right before my wife and I found each other. I had like one last really chaotic fling.
You just needed that, did you? Just to test
I
you,
guess
yeah?
I just needed to get that out of my system, and then he came along.
Yeah. When did you meet your wife that you're married to right now?
We met on Facebook.
And that was around.
It was 5 years ago.
Okay. Now, she is also practicing channeling as well, I believe, or she can do it.
Channel does healing. She's a multiple threat. She can do just about anything.
And does she have a website, or is it do people
I
connect to her?
don't know what she had one, and we took it down because of the baby, because she's been taking care of our baby, and with no help, because there's no family around at all here. So yeah, so eventually she's going to get her website back up and running and work again, I think.
What is
But
your
we're all,
website? What is your website, Daniel?
it's danielscranton.com.
Okay. All right. So, you've got an interesting background as well. There was a time, I believe, you can fill in the dots here, that you did have a really dark night. Well, what's it called? A dark night of the soul, and you even contemplated suicide. And I think there's a lot of people that contemplate suicide. I think it was a friend of mine that once said, if you're not living life if you've not contemplated it. Now, obviously, there's massive ramifications when people do follow through with that, and I think it's a complete no-no. But just tell us about that time as well, and what changed you to get out of that space.
Yeah, I would say I had a suicidal ideation type of thing, where it was like I thought about it, I knew I couldn't do it. My ex-wife that I was with at the time, her brother had committed suicide. So and she was very close with him. He was the only real family member that she was, really in a good relationship with. So there was no way I could do that. And but I considered it because I was in enormous pain in my body. And I just remember lying in bed in the middle of the day and crying because of it. And just thinking I don't want to be here. And And then not that night, but the night after is when I had the most amazing experience of my life, which is to wake up from a dream where I said to the guy who is Abraham's videographer, his name's Peter Beamish. I turned to him in the dream. It's just me and him standing in this desert, like, you know, like an Area 51 Roswell type place. And I turned to him and I go, I understand now about the other beings. And that was it. That was the entirety of the dream. And I woke up and I started to feel energy coming in through the crown of my head. And it was so intense and orgasmic that my body was like arching on the bed. You know, I was like barely on the bed. I felt so amazing. And it just swept through me from head to toe over and over again till I started to wonder about it. You know, I was wondering, what does this have to do with the dream? What does this have to do with aliens? Because I knew what by other beings I meant aliens, and Peter's really into aliens, and I knew that about him. So that's why he was in that dream, I'm sure. And I just would then be able to have a conversation with them based on, like, a pendulum will give you a yes and a no. So for me, it was like, yes, huge surge of energy through my body. No, nothing. And so I had this conversation with them for a while. I have no idea how long this lasted for, but at some point I thought, I got to open my eyes and see if there's anybody in the room here with me, because I had a sleep mask on the whole time. And I took it off and I opened my eyes, and it's like the whole thing started over again. I couldn't see anyone in the room, but the download of energy just sweeping through my body started all over again in the same intensity as it was in the beginning. And then eventually it stopped, of course, because everything has to. And from that point forward, so because of the physical pain, I thought the physical pain was being caused by a hernia. So I thought they were healing me. And that was one of the questions I asked. And the answer was no. And so I do, you know, I do meditate every day, and I had been meditating every day for 10 years when this happened. So my meditations just became more intense, longer. I knew that I could feel something if I was able to focus and maybe connect with these beings again. And so that was what I would do. And for probably a couple hours a day, I would just sit and meditate and focus, and I could feel energy come in through my back. But it was never the same as that one time. But one of the things I was able to accomplish in these meditation sessions was I can now give myself full body goosebumps just by breathing and focusing. And oh, it's really easy. And it's you can't probably pick it up on the camera, but it's all the way down the legs and everything. So that I could do fairly shortly after attempting to make these connections again. And certain songs would trigger that experience for me too. And this whole thing of, like, some people are looking at this and going, what's this about? It's totally intuitive. I don't know why this is what I do, you know, when I do that, it just is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess meditation to you then, and that obviously if you're practicing it every day, that's an important part of your daily life, isn't it? I mean, I guess it's sort of, does it re-energize you? Does it, you know, help you
Yes.
to, yeah.
Yep. And I do it before I channel each night. I channel a message each 6 nights a week now, as opposed to 7. But that's one of the things I need to do. My day is much better when I meditate first thing in the morning. So like this morning, that's what I did before I got out of bed. And it's I mean, I know that if I had like a lot more time, and it's hard with a 22-month-old to like have time for everything, I could have all kinds of amazing experiences just through meditation. And I've never taken ayahuasca, and I've never done mushrooms, and I don't think that they're necessary. I don't have a problem with them as being a big part of our community nowadays, but I would say to anyone that it's not necessary to have an experience like that. If you can train yourself to do it through conscious breathing, meditation, connecting with nature, you'll ultimately, you don't then have to worry about the fact that these things are illegal in most countries. You don't have to travel and have a shaman and all this stuff. You don't have to worry about throwing up and bad experiences.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of personal stories online, isn't there, where people tell the recollection of taking, whatever they're doing. Yeah, DMT is a big thing right now, and as
And
you,
DMT is something that's released in the body. Like you have it in your body. And that's one of the things I remember learning from Deepak too. It's like anything that Pfizer, Upjohn, or any of these other companies can produce, your body can produce. So, taking and DMT is not, they're not getting that from like a flower or plant like ayahuasca and like mushrooms that pulling them out of the ground. So that's, to me, it's pretty scary stuff. I wouldn't do it.
yeah, I hear you there. But I think an important message that you give in here is that, we can all meditate, right? Most of us can meditate. And most of us are able to use that space of meditation to ask any question that we want to ask. And it's pretty true, isn't it? That all answers really do lie within. And whether it's our own voice coming to us, which I've said like a parrot on so many of these shows, or it's a separate voice sometimes, but it's still us. It's that wiser aspect of us. We all have that ability to do this, don't we?
Yeah, and everything is you. So whether you're getting it from within or from a channel or something you read online, it's all from you essentially, because you, like we have already established here, you create your reality. So whatever you're getting in a session with someone else, you've created that particular scenario of that being what they say to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. And you mentioned Dolores Cannon there. Actually, you mentioned James Van Praagh as well. I know James Van Praagh, and he's an interesting psychic, and I think we all have different teachers, don't we, throughout our life. I mean, you're listening to some of the Dolores Cannon books right now, but wherever we're at, whatever stage that we're at, there is always someone there to get something from. And I guess we're teaching each other as well, aren't we?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. That's, I mean, that's the best way to look at life, really, is like, well, why did I create this? What is this person coming to give me in this moment? Or, instead of just blaming everything, all your problems on things outside of yourself and saying like, well, if that person would just change, then everything would be better. We've got to look within, because that's ultimately why we're here, is to have these experiences to get us to grow. And if we're not taking those experiences as being exactly what they are, the impetus to get us to grow, then we're wasting the experience and instead just stewing in our resentment and our resistance, which doesn't serve us at all and probably eventually causes illness in the body.
Oh, it doesn't it just? Would you say most illness in the body is some sort of repression for something that we don't want to face up to?
Yeah, even if it's past life, yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
So past life stuff comes up and we don't understand it, and then you go to the doctor and the doctor doesn't understand it, but it's something you need to ultimately uncover or at least process. You need to have that experience, and which means that the numbing of yourself to it is not going to serve you. It's not going to, you're then not getting the important aspect of what it was meant to give you if you're just going and numbing yourself to it. Like with me, having those symptoms and then also feeling like, well, I know what a doctor would say, so I don't want to go to a doctor. And then eventually led to me feeling like I had hit rock bottom.
Yeah. And going to a doctor's not a bad thing at that point as well. With our own self-help that we
True,
can we can
true.
yeah.
I mean, I eventually did go to an acupuncturist um, when the pain came back eventually. And she's like, "Oh, that's your kidneys," and so made me feel kind of silly for not ever thinking like, "Oh, I could just go see a naturopathic doctor. I don't have to go see the, you know."
Absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah. I know a lot of people that see both, and yeah, that stuff's fascinating, isn't it? Where they can just tell where in the body the problem's coming from, and yeah, I think with one of the points I was trying to make there as well is that with some of your teachers now, obviously, you've read the Seth books. I
Yep.
think would you say there's some of the better material that's been channeled?
Well, I like Seth a lot. I like Bashar a lot. And I like now that I've discovered Dolores's work, um, I'm really liking what she was able to compile over the years. Um, and I see that they're all sort of intertwined. How there's a lot of the same messages in there. And of course, Abraham was a big influence on me at a point in my life too.
Well, let me ask you about that as well. So, you went to a number of workshops, 10 plus or more, or
100 plus,
wow,
maybe
okay,
maybe hundreds, yeah.
okay. And you sat in that energy. I mean, you was able to go to what do they call it? Is it the hot chair, or I might be saying it
Hot
wrong?
seat,
The hot seat. Sorry, yeah,
yeah.
the hot seat. And was there a time then, as you sort of to move away from going to these workshops, or the very last few that you went to, that the message was that you can do this too?
The last time I sat in the hot seat, I was asking Abraham about my channeling because it had started a few months prior to this particular workshop. I think it was in Austin, Texas. And I was asking questions because I had no one to help me with this. Like I had no mentors. I knew of no classes for channeling. I just was on my own. And so I asked Bashar to in private and in the public arena about my channeling. But what Abraham said was eventually they said, "You're just making too much of this." So I said, "Okay." And then I just pushed the microphone aside and got up and got out. And but before that, Abraham gave me some good advice about it, and told me things that I now tell people when I'm teaching channeling. One of which is that we, as the channeler, we're not getting the information for the person that they can't get on their own. We're helping the person realize that the information was in them all along. That's our real job. So I think that no one should go to a channeler thinking they're going to have all the answers. They're going to have the winning lottery numbers. They're going to tell me who my soulmate is. They're going to tell me where I should live, what I should do for a living, whether I should invest in Bitcoin. It's not like that's not what it's meant to be, because again, we were talking earlier about getting the most out of scenarios that we create in our lives and getting the sort of like spiritual message within them. Well, if you could just have a magic 8 ball and get all the answers, then you wouldn't, it's like having the Midas touch or something. Eventually you just stop growing as a person because you never have to do anything. You never have to access anything or feel anything. You just get to take the straightest, narrowest path to all your desires being fulfilled. So to me, channeling is really about two things. It's about giving people a spiritual teaching, which is like essentially like you need to love yourself, you need to forgive others, you need to empower yourself, you need to go within. Those are the types of messages that I think are most important. And then there's an energy transmission that happens when a person channels too, that most people are completely unaware of. Because I mean, I don't mean to say this in a disparaging way, but most people they're taking the channeling in through their head. And that's the only place it's going. It's not going deeper than the head. So the head, and I was one of those people too. When I'd go to these Abraham things, I was very cerebral about it. I would write down questions that I thought were really brilliant, and I wanted to take the whole conversation to a new level. But then eventually I realized, when I'm doing these things, when I'm trying to get up in the hot seat so desperately and ask these questions, I'm not really enjoying myself as much as I could be sitting here for these 4 hours with Esther and hundreds of people. So I then started to focus more on what I could feel and what was possible for me to feel. And so that led to, at an Asheville workshop of theirs, I started having these dry heaves in the middle of the workshop, it was an intimate one. It was like 190 people, and I didn't want to be a distraction. I never wanted to take away from what Esther was doing with my own thing that I was doing. So I stopped it. But then the next day I asked about it. I got in the hot seat and I asked about it, and they said, "Yeah, you're onto something there. You should keep doing it." So they basically told me that I was going to do this, and that green light was what I needed, because I thought, well, maybe I'm trying too hard. Maybe this is something I really shouldn't be doing. So, I mean, I owe a lot to Esther and Jerry when he was still with us, and Abraham, because they really helped me with that, just getting involved in channeling in the first place.
Yeah, and she's still going right now, isn't she?
Yeah,
Esther
she's
is.
in her probably 70s, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I actually met the channel that got her on her course. It was uh,
Sheila,
yes, Sheila and Marcus. Sheila back in the day with
right.
Theo. That's right. Yeah, that was interesting. So when you're in this process of on your journey of discovery, or on this journey, obviously you've got some other job in the background at the time. Then
Yeah.
becoming a full-time channeler, which you are now, that was never on the deck. That was never something that, on the cards that you thought, oh yeah, that's definitely a career path that I want to go down. Um,
Yeah, it was
so,
actually.
oh, what you did want to become a channeler?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was my job was back breaking, like that's why I was in pain. Um, because I was buying stuff and then selling it on eBay and Amazon. So I literally had probably 11,000 or more items in my 2-bedroom apartment that I was selling, and it was mostly movies that I was selling on eBay and Amazon. And so there was a lot of physical labor moving boxes around, because of course I had to put them in boxes, and then going to the record store in Hollywood called Amoeba. That's this giant, like Home Depot sized place, where I would just be squatting on the ground, flipping through, and I had my scanner to look up the prices. And it took a toll on me. I would work 7 days a week. I would work some days 12 or more hours a day. I knew I couldn't do that for the rest of my life. I knew that there had to be something more for me, but I thought maybe it would be life coaching, since I had such a good grasp of, the teachings that I had come to, come to sort of master in terms of knowledge anyway, from all those years of studying. So, but as soon as channeling became a possibility, I was like, yeah, sign me up.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of different channelers out there. There's a lot, right? And and I guess that you would class yourself as would you say a trance channeler?
No, very, very conscious, actually.
Interesting, because when I've watched a video or two of yours, as you start channeling, to me it looks like you're sort of trancing a bit. You've gone into that deeper trance state, but you feel that you're not. You're a conscious channel. Interesting.
I do. I think that I go into an altered state. I think that you would be able to measure it. If someone hooked something up to me, they'd be able to say, well, there's something different going on in his brain. Because I know Daryl Anka has done that. And I'm sure that and I know that there's energy present that's not present when I'm not channeling, because I can feel it. It moves my body around. It gives my arms and hands these sorts of motions and things that they do. And it's all totally something that I just allow to happen. I don't choose the movements or the sounds that come through me at the beginning. It's all very much something I just surrender to. But my ego and my mind are very present during the whole thing. So I can stop it at any time. I know exactly what's being said. Sometimes I'm very critical of my own channeling as it's happening. And then I'll have to like look at it later. I'll have to be in that transcription phase of it where I'm going, oh no, this was actually pretty good.
Yeah, well, how did you get past that stage of, and then you must have gone through this, I presume, that, uh, is what I'm doing of benefit? Is what I'm doing genuine?
Yeah.
Is this all of my mind coming from my higher self or my mind? And, leading in from that, from that question, should I say, that the idea that, how do you tell if it's coming from someone's mind? How do you tell if it's actually a genuine channeling where it's teaching information that you wasn't aware of?
Well, that's a great question, and something else I've been thinking of a lot when I'm listening to Dolores Cannon, because I feel like Dolores Cannon is like is to the New Age thought right now and the New Age teachings that are out there, as Aretha Franklin was to like R&B music. It's like um, so many things that I've heard about in my sessions with clients that I didn't know where they were getting these ideas from. They're coming from Dolores's work. So people who channel, I know for a fact they're influenced by what others have brought forth before them. And that is fine. It's fine to be influenced. It's fine that, because of the background that we channelers have, we have the lexicon to work with that is accepted in the New Age now, like soul over soul, source, vibration, frequency, things of that nature, that if we didn't have the sort of like template in place that others put there for us, then we might have some other word for, come up with some other word for. So I think it's fine. But to answer your question, yeah, it's like, it's totally normal and it's natural. And I think if anyone's not having a little bit of skepticism about what they're doing and questioning it, then they might have some sort of like narcissistic personality disorder, because it's healthy to question yourself and say, well, is this real? And am I just making this up? Because, well, it's on the one hand, it's healthy, and on the other hand, it's the ego. It's doing that. So there, the ego, of course, the ego has a negative and a positive aspect to it. The ego can be really hard on you, and the ego can be like, you're the greatest, so it's like we live by the ego, we die by the ego, sort of thing. And with channeling, after you've channeled something, your ego might say, that was just, you were just reiterating what you read in a Seth book or you heard on a Dolores Cannon video. And part of that is that the ego likes to stay in control. The ego would rather be running the show all the time. And the ego is all about separation. So if you're channeling, it's all about merging. It's all about you letting go of control and letting something happen to you that otherwise would not have happened if you just were staying in your ego, worrying about your survival and, and your status in the world, and, all the things that the ego worries about. So you start channeling and channel things like, you need to surrender, you need to let go, you need to get out of your mind, the mind being the tool of the ego. So then, of course, the ego is going to say afterwards, I don't think that was very good.
Right, yeah. And I guess it's as
Then you have
well,
got to put it out there.
yeah, and I guess as well, you've put the time into this. You've done years of work on yourself, and it's not like you've just started channeling and you've set up a YouTube channel. You've been through a long process.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that I've worked on myself since I was 18. I started going to therapy at 18, and I'm still a work in progress too. I want, there's nothing perfect about me and my thoughts or feelings or anything,
Well, that just, and that's great that you admit that, because I think some of us think that we've got to be, whiter than white to do this work, and that's just not the case. We've all got a human history, and it's this is the reality, isn't it? So
Yeah, yeah. It's good to know that, even as I've been doing this for 10 and a half years now, and as much as I've seen myself grow as a channeler, I know I'm just like an infant compared to the Esthers and the Daryls of the world, and the people who've been doing it for even
but
longer.
do you think they've been doing that in previous lifetimes?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not just. Do you think you've done it in previous lifetimes, if such things exist, which I'm
I
sure they
think
do?
so. Yeah, I'm very strange in in the sense that, like, I don't think about my past lives very much, and I don't think about where I'm from, and I don't think about, and there's a lot of things that you would think that I'd be kind of like, well, I know I'm from the Pleiades, and I know that I had this past life in Egypt. I I know that that sort of stuff will come up when it needs to for me, but I know I don't need to figure it out right now.
Yeah, because you can get so lost, can't you, in all that stuff, and it's like, how ungrounded do you wanna be? Because we've still got this shared reality, haven't we? I mean, I think that's an important question, is that, how do you live by, the teachings that come through you, and how do you ground that as well, so that, because, you're still gonna have issues, aren't you? You've still got things that trigger you, and, being here, having this life experience is really important as well.
Yeah, and it's good to know through these Dolores Cannon books I've been listening to on Audible. It's good to know that Earth really is the hardest place, because it really helps you to realize, um, as much as you feel like you're failing, a lot of times it's we're sort of set up to fail, and it's important to have those failures at times too. It really helps us to grow. But what, it's great that I do channel pretty much every day, because I get to hear the messages every day, and they need to sink in. There's like a certain amount of, like, it's like, eventually, if you hit stone enough times with water, it then starts to erode the stone away. And that's kind of like what we're doing with the repetition of the same kind of, like, energies and thoughts and teachings of channeling. Is it's like eventually uh wearing away the filters and, the gunk that we have built up around the true essence of who we are. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why I went to all those Abraham workshops, even though a lot of them she would channel essentially the same thing, and then and then you'd be like, well, I'm there to kind of like hear the one thing that's new or different. But you're also just getting the gunk cleaned out, and it takes time after time of being bombarded with the same truths until you realize, like, oh yeah, I could apply that truth that I've been learning about to this situation.
Yeah, and it took those many sessions to, for it to finally get in. I mean, most times, as you say, we listen, but we don't listen, and and we don't even feel it sometimes, do we? When we're in some of these experiences, and but that's okay. That's not with any judgment. And I think as well, just getting back to the question of, okay, so yes, you would say that you are listening back to what you're teaching, and you're absorbing your own information, and um and you like to keep it practical as well. But I mean, I guess it depends upon the client what they're going to ask, and I guess sometimes the answer a client's going to get back is maybe the level that they're at, and only when they're able to come to you with a different spiritual growth at a place where they're different, maybe they would be asking different questions.
Absolutely. I want to double back to something you were asking about earlier, which is the trance state. So if I was in the trance state, would I be getting all these messages all the time? No, not consciously anyway, because I'd be out of it. And I'm not going to listen back to every session that I do in a day on the recordings of them. So it's good that I have that conscious state to really absorb it all.
Well, I found that through God, probably 80 something right now channelers that I've interviewed, that the conscious channeling it does seem to be the newer way right now of
Yeah,
coming from.
I agree.
The very few and far between deep trance channelers out there, really. They are, but it's not as common as what you do and practice. And also, if someone wants to, try to figure out how do they apply discernment when going to see a channeler, well, I guess we can all channel lower energy beings, and sometimes some of these channelers out there, I will say this, that they are, that yes, they're genuinely channeling, but they're not channeling what they think they're channeling.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, there aren't just higher dimensional beings and lower dimensional beings. There's also thought streams. There's thought forms. I've had this experience like for months now where I bump into these thought forms as soon as like a certain time of day hits and I'm in a certain area outside my house. And it's like a conversation that I just like pick up in my head each time. I'm so aware that thought forms exist, that that's a real thing that someone can and like we were talking about earlier, there's the good influence of, say, you having read like all the Conversations with God books, all the Seth books, and Abraham's and all that stuff. There's that good influence because all that's really good stuff. And then there's the state of the internet right now. So that to me, like what I've come to realize over the past couple of days is that conspiracy theory has become the new mainstream media, in the sense that it's doing the exact same thing. It's telling you this is what you need to fear. Film at 11. Stay tuned. I'm going to get another update from the Galactic Federation, so stay tuned. I got to tell you who's evil now. And it's the same thing that they're saying the mainstream media is guilty of.
It's so interesting as well, sorry to interrupt it, to see some of
Yeah.
the channelers that I knew before who have gone more into the conspiracy side right now. And we've all got free will with this, haven't we? What energy do we want to bring? They think they're doing the right thing, and I guess maybe they are, because maybe the people that flock to them, it's just what they need at that time on their journey. Does it make it
Yeah.
wrong or right? Well, is it teaching you discernment? Probably.
It's, yeah, hopefully. And hopefully people come to realize that it's much more important to feel something than it is to know something, you know. And so people who are just looking for information, that's if you're just looking for information, that's a good way to get some negative entities. Because if you just want information, there's plenty of information out there, information's everywhere, but did you raise your vibration to get that information? Or are you lowering your vibration to justify you sort of playing in that realm
Or
of that
are you
darkness?
suffering from mental health issues and you're actually making it up, and you're not able to discern what's healthy for what you're doing or not? Do you know what I mean? You're just so you're mentally incapacitated at some level. Covertly on the front end, it talks and it speaks, and the person looks very genuine, but in the background, the wires aren't crossing.
Well, yeah, it's funny you brought that up and not me, because I actually was a psych major and worked in mental health in Boston for 3 years after I graduated from BU, and that's exactly what I see. I see the same delusions there used to be all these delusions around Christianity. That's a big source of people's delusions. And of course, the FBI, the CIA, aliens, those have always been huge delusional. And I say delusion, I know that some people are legitimately seeing into other dimensions and having experiences that the rest of us aren't having, but then there's real paranoia.
And it could be both mixed in. There's something they're connecting with, but then mentally in the background they're not very well. And guess what? That's where the human side steps in then, much more. And some people, it's more of an evil side of them that comes through, where they generally, know how to manipulate, and they haven't dealt with their own issues, and their self-manipulation comes in. And but the entities, I guess, still want to speak through them, but then it's pretty 5% or less of what the truth is of what they're trying to say. So
Yeah, and there has to be some truth sprinkled in order for it to resonate enough to keep people interested. So that's the thing that also you'll be like, well, yeah, I mean, of course there's some truth in some of these conspiracy theories, but then what is it being used to do? Is it being used to empower people? Because if you're not empowering people, then you're not really being of service to them.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention this as well. On your website, you've got some great courses on there. I got to look at them today, and I was like, oh, look, how to channel, how to do this. And I'm like, so if you're interested in any channeling courses, just check Daniel's website out. And your website, one more time, Daniel, is?
It's danielscranton.com. Scranton, just like the city in Pennsylvania that the office was based in or set in.
Yeah, and just to let people know as well that all the links for Daniel are below in the description as well, including his books. And I haven't even got into a quarter of the questions right now. We've got such limited time together. Very quickly before we start any channeling, then, why Hawaii?
I was living in LA in 1999. I'd moved there in 97. I really went hardcore into raw food. I've been raw vegan now for over 10 years straight, but it started in the 90s. That was my first run with it. I went from like 98 to 2004. And I thought this was the place to be for raw food because of all the tropical fruit, right? So I went and I stayed at a raw and polyamorous and all these other things like what's it called? Intentional community on the Big Island. And I stayed there for a week or so. And I thought that's how I want to live. I want to live that way. They were living so close to nature, like way, way, way overboard, really.
So you were kind of following your bliss in a sense by doing that.
Yeah, and I didn't make it because they didn't accept my application to come live with them. So I was like, okay. And then 2002 rolled around and the thought popped in again. I'm going to move to Hawaii. This time I was thinking Kauai. But then I fell in love with my first wife and I wound up shacking up with her and getting married and all that stuff. And she didn't want to move to Hawaii. So, so then 2014 rolls around, and I'm talking to a friend of mine who's a psychic. And she's saying, and I'm explaining how, like, my second wife and I, we're having all this trouble finding a place to live in Ojai, which is where we lived. And she wanted to move to a different house, and we just couldn't find anything. And the psychic said, well, you need to be closer to the water. Ojai's like 20 minutes from the ocean. And she said, and you need to be by a volcano. And that's when it clicked in my head. I was like, oh yeah, Hawaii. I forgot that I always wanted to live in Hawaii. So then in 2014, I finally made it, and third try. And I wound up on the Big Island for 6 months, didn't really like it there. The volcano was very active, and found myself actually being invited to come here to do channelings for people. So like I would just go to my friend's apartment or house, she was renting a house, and do these little workshops, and I would teach channeling, and I'd do some channeling, and that made me fall in love with Maui. And then I was like, once my lease was up on this place in on the Big Island, I was like, I want to move to Maui. So that's what I did. And I was very lucky to be able to find a place, because Maui is Maui's a very popular spot. I mean, a lot of people do think of it as paradise. So of course, a lot of people want to live here. And again, it was so easy for me to find a place to live, because I just went on Craigslist, and there it was, a 3-month sublet. And then I been here ever since. So it's been 6 years now. But I think that there was this also the fact that I live on Mount Haleakala is interesting, because I was at this workshop with Bashar, and Bashar was talking about all the different chakra points and vortices on the planet. And he mentioned Mount Haleakala as the heart chakra. And that's where I live now. I live like minutes from the Haleakala crater entrance, the entrance to drive up there, it's very high up, but I'm still technically on the mountain.
So one thing I wanted to ask you as well was, obviously you've got this. Well, I've actually seen you live. Let me say that I was at the channel panel.
That's great. That's how we met.
That's how we met, and that was a fantastic day. That was in Los Angeles, and yeah, I watched you channel, and it was fascinating what you did, and you filled the whole room up with your toning that you do to get you into the state that brings you this connection to what you channel. And tell me if I'm wrong here, right? But have you taken vocal lessons to fine tune that tonal? And what do you? I mean, am I right with what I say about the sort of the tones I use to bring in the connection that you've got?
It's not really the case, because as soon as I go, I want to channel, I'm channeling. So I'm channeling the tones, I'm channeling the sounds, and every movement you see in me is also a channeled movement. So at this point, and I think it's because of my background, and because I was meditator for so long, it never took me any time to start channeling. What it took time for was for me to start speaking for the beings in English. So originally I would go sing and ring and sing, 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 over and over and over and over again. And then I would get the creators in and to say, we are here for you. So that was actually a message to me that I eventually listened to. I eventually said, Sing and ring. Maybe they want me to take voice lessons. So I went to go see my now friend Kimberly um, for voice lessons, and her studio was actually called Singing for Your Soul, and she was actually very familiar with channeling and her sister channels, and so I was like, this is a perfect match, right? And we would work together, and I would be able to live out my sort of like rock star fantasies, of like, that's what if I could do anything, that's what I would be, I'd be a lead singer.
You've got the look,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's no, it's no accident that this is how I look. So I I went to her and I was singing like, Coldplay and Soundgarden and all these bands I liked, um and their songs in the lessons. And then eventually she goes, "Well, you want to do a different kind of warm up today? You want to do tones?" And I was like, "Sure." So we sat across from each other and we just belt out these tones. We do 3 for each chakra, and we just like blow the roof off the studio, and the sound, when you're sitting across from another person, you're toning, the sound like bounces off of itself and creates this cool reverb sort of thing. And yeah, and at the same time, I was coincidentally, synchronistically listening to Wendy Kennedy's channelings about the power of tones and sounds that she had done with her Palladian group. And so I was like, Kimberly, I've been hearing about overtones, like, how do you do overtoning? I want to do that. She goes, I don't know. I don't know how to overtone. So we watched some YouTube videos together, and they were, not helpful in terms of like getting you to do it, other than the fact that this one guy says that he just listens to all the throat singers and overtone singers, and then like learns from just listening. But what happened was the creators then went from, they were no longer doing sing and ring. I got the message. So
And let me just
then they
pause you there.
started,
Let's pause you. The creators were who you first channeled. Is that right?
yes, the creators are my very first
Okay.
channel entities. Yeah.
Yeah. Continue from there. Sorry.
And then they started to do light language. And the light language thing was also totally, was another one of those crazy things where it's like, I didn't know from light language. I never heard that expression before, but I'm getting a massage one day and all of a sudden I'm speaking light language on the table. And then basically that's the only time I ever spoke it. But I'd get a massage, I'd speak light language. I didn't know what to do with it. But then it started to come through in the channeling in the beginning. And it would be the thing that they would do in the beginning. And then once I sort of said to the universe, I guess, I want to overtone, then the creator said, "Oh, okay, this is how it's going to, this is how this is going to be your new preamble to whatever it is we're going to say. It's going to be these overtones that they moved my tongue and my mouth and everything to create the sound. I didn't know how to do it. So now I know how to do it, but it's still very much being done through me."
Yeah, and it's all part of the process that you work with right now, which is really fascinating. Sort of just coming back a little bit here, right? Obviously, there's an important question I want to ask you is, what is channeling to you, right? But obviously, when you went down this path of your exploration into, the metaphysics and everything else and channeling, where does the psychic abilities play a part in your work as well? Because if you've opened yourself up with the channeling, did you find that some of your psychic abilities opened up as well?
When I'm not channeling, I'm not great with that stuff. I have to sort of tune in. I have to be channeling, or I have to meditate or something. But me just walking around the kitchen, I'm not getting stuff like some people do. Like maybe my mentor Nora Harold gets that kind of thing, but she's got 15 years or so on me in this realm. But I don't walk around feeling like I'm hearing things, seeing things all the time. But when I'm channeling, I do think Daniel gets stuff too while it's happening, in the sense that, like, I know things, I see things in my mind's eye that I wouldn't be if I wasn't channeling. So there definitely has been an improvement for me in it, but as I walk around living my day-to-day life, I feel like a very normal person.
Right. Yes. Yes. As normal as we can be. Right. Whatever normal is for some people. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
whatever reality that you're going to create. I guess that's what I mean. So, is there some questions, do you think, that people are not going to get answers with through the connection that you've got? And I also almost want to say as well, what puts me off sometime, when I've practiced channeling is that, am I going to get the right answer for what they're asking?
Yeah.
If they're going to say, well, what was my grandma's name? Do you know what I mean? Is that, how do you, if some things won't come through, what is the reason for that, do you think?
Um, it's not what the person needs. So do you really, a lot of people think they need to win the lottery, or they think they need to know what currency to invest in, but they don't.
Or they're after validation, which maybe even that's not what they're meant to be getting from the session.
Well,
Or do you think that's a
I'm
cop out?
validation of what?
So if there's things, well, I suppose I'm going more on a psychic aspect here. Do you know what I mean? Like, where,
Like
yeah, that type of validation, which a channeling session's very different, isn't it? But some people may expect that.
Daryl Anka and Bashar, I don't know which one it is who says this, would say, like, if you know how much change you have in your pocket, then just, or the easiest way for you to find out how much change you have in your pocket is reach in your pocket and look at how much change you have in your hand. You don't need to ask someone. I mean, I know that I get why people want to do that, to see if it's legitimate. But again, that's a very mental thing, that if what you need to know about channeling is, if it resonates, then it helped you. If it doesn't resonate, it still helped you, because now you maybe will depend more on yourself for the wisdom that you want, or the direction that you want to take in your life. Because ultimately, like Abraham said to me, we should all be directing people back to themselves. We should all be telling people, you have the answers within you. You're the powerful one. And the channeled entities, first of all, they exist on different dimensional planes. They're not walking around like private detectives looking at all the evidence and Googling people and stuff. They're dealing with you in the present moment with the energy that you're bringing. So if you're coming with an energy of, I want to test you and see if you're legit, but I'm going to hold the answers back here where you can't access them because I'm not giving you access to them. So I'm proving my own point that this is all hogwash. Then that's the reality, like you said, they're creating. That will be what they needed to know, is that this is not for you.
Yeah, and you've almost answered the question there on, like, what does channeling mean to you? But if you just want to sum it up just very quickly.
It is a person taking the time to go within and raise their vibration high enough to where they have access to energy and information, because there is information in there too, but it's mostly the energy that you're channeling. The person then's ability to take that and translate it into something, whether it's words, tones, light language, something they paint, whatever it is they're translating it into then becomes the product of their channeling. It becomes the end result of that. But ultimately, you could channel and not ever say a word, not ever get an image or even a knowing, because you're just saying, I just want to raise my vibration and channel positive energy. Maybe you just want to be the person that the planet needs right now, which is the person who's sitting and going, how can I send more love, light, and healing to India or Syria or Yemen or Palestine or wherever it's needed most right now? And so that person is not getting information about disclosure and what the government's going to say next. They're getting something that is what we all really need. I mean, ultimately, if our goal is not unity and unconditional love and compassion, then we're playing the same third dimensional game, just with different, board games or whatever, different dice.
What is it you channel nowadays then? What groups is it that you bring through?
Well, my almost daily messages are from the Arcturian Council, who are a ninth dimensional non-physical collective that evolved and ascended within the Arcturian system to where they are now. And I've been channeling them, I think, for about 5 years. It was right around the time my wife and I met that I started channeling them. And probably not coincidentally, yeah, I mean, I went to another psychic one day, just while my wife was getting her hair and nails done. And I had Talea, our daughter, with us. And the psychic woman was like, and we were just chatting. I wasn't having a session with her. Her shop was right next to the hair salon. So we're chatting, and she goes, why do I keep hearing Arcturian or Arcturian? Like, she almost got the word Arcturian without knowing what that meant. And she was very, very close to getting it exactly. And she was saying that Talea, our daughter, is Arcturian.
Soul, on a soul level.
Yeah, like whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, right.
Not like, I mean, I'm the father.
Yeah, genetically she's human. Yeah, I get you. Well, they do say they're walking around us, don't they? And
oh yeah.
did that ever put you off at any time that that it wasn't it had to have that label?
The
Arcturian label. This,
Star Family thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't place as much importance on it as some people do, because I think that ultimately we're here to be all of it, be all the star systems, and integrate them as well, and what they represent, really. Like Sirius represents service, and Pleiades represents healing, and I think the Arcturian system represents spirituality, like being on a spiritual path, Cassiopeia, love, and so on. So to integrate and unite all of that within the self means you don't want to just say I'm 100% Pleiadian. That's the only place I've ever incarnated before, and I came to Earth to save all you guys. Well, that's a great story, but it doesn't really serve you to think that way, because you're everything. We're all everything, and there's no point in drawing any lines in the sand anywhere.
And you've still come here to have this human experience, and to bypass that is, well,
right. To say, like, I identify more as an alien than a human. Well, that's cool, but you're still here now, and I know through. I don't mean to sound like I lack compassion for those people, because I do have compassion for everyone who's ever been suicidal like me, or who have ever wanted to leave like I did. But I mean, one of the things that Dolores points out in her sessions too is that there are a group of people who have never felt like they wanted to be here, who, at no point in their life did they feel like this is where they should be, or this is what they want to be doing, is having an earthly incarnation. So
Okay, well, let's just get into the channeling then. Let's take a break right now, and we'll come back right after that.
Well, Arcturian Council. Well, pleased to connect. Will yes, yes, yes. Hello.
Well, it's interesting to have this time with you. And do you feel that people in general and humanity at large realize just how special they are with the impact each of our lives have in this lifetime?
You're all necessary pieces of a gigantic puzzle that we are all putting together. There is no one that is insignificant. And we know that on your world, it looks like certain people are more important than others because of their ability to influence. And you're starting to see that at this point in your spiritual evolution and your technological evolution, that there are more people out there who can have millions of followers, and still the vast majority of other people who are not following them have never heard of that person. So you're seeing that more and more teachers and healers are emerging, as well as those who just want to be labeled as influencers. But it doesn't matter. What does matter is that all of that shows the average person, a person who wasn't born into a royal family, a person who has never had their own television show, that the person can have an impact. They can influence. And even those who have no interest in having followers, have no interest in putting themselves on the internet or writing a book, they're also having that same impact because of their thoughts, because of their experiences, because of their willingness to feel, their willingness to go through something in their personal lives. That person is adding something to the collective consciousness that only they can add, because they are that unique piece to the puzzle. And so you're all very, very significant, and it serves each and every one of you to think of yourselves in that way while also having a certain amount of humility about that.
Thank you. And is this a group that I'm speaking to?
We once knew ourselves as individuals, as you still do there on Earth, but we have merged in a sense to become a collective. So we don't think of ourselves as a group of individuals now, but we know ourselves as more than an individuated consciousness.
And you've incarnated before?
Yes.
Okay. What is the connection then, karmically, with Daniel?
He has been someone that we have connected with in previous lifetimes, including lifetimes that he led in our star system. So there was a pre-existing relationship there.
And when you say past lives, I mean, are we to think that they're past, or is that, if we look at it in a different perspective, they're happening now?
They are happening now in the sense that everything is happening now, but not everything is being experienced at the same time. So you have experiences that you can say, well, that I experienced yesterday, even though that yesterday reality still exists. So in that sense, simultaneous time is real. But the fact that you all experience it and we all experience it still from where we are, as moving from one point to another or moving from one level of consciousness to another, then we can say that a certain amount of time has elapsed or certain experiences are in our rear view mirror at this point.
Is there infinite realities out there and infinite universes in ways that we don't even understand or can't comprehend?
And it's good that you can't comprehend or understand it, because then you would be placing limitation on it. And you don't want to do that. You want there to be more than you can possibly imagine, because you're an eternal being. And if after a while you have it all figured out and you know everything, then what's the point of continuing to exist as an eternal being?
Yeah, and I only say that there because I want to, try to keep it practical on the level that I'm at as well, right? But the 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 joy at that is that the understanding maybe that actually there's a lot of realities that we could go and experience if we so choose to. So, we may think we're limited on this moment right now to what we can go and further experience in this lifetime that we've got left, but actually there's a whole myriad. Is that true in a sense?
Yes, and you're also creating new ones all the time. So that's fun of it as well. In other words, what is eternal and infinite and still expanding and becoming more of itself? If that is not something to get excited about, then we don't know what is.
But if I've created a lifetime where, I'm stuck in the system maybe, right? To say that I am, right? I'm in prison and I've got to see through a period, then that whole sense of creating your own reality is going to take that individual a lot longer than it would do someone that's got their freedom.
Well, it depends on how you're using your freedom. And a person who is incarcerated and doesn't have to worry about putting a roof over their head or putting food on the table, doesn't have to worry about buying clothes and all of those sorts of things. That person could actually spend quite a bit of time reading and meditating and getting more in touch with themselves. So it all is about how you use the circumstances that are in front of you.
Right. And maybe even just thinking out loud in my head as you're sort of talking to me that, maybe they're not even thinking about these type of questions. Maybe they're not. And that's where their soul level's at. And that's what they
That's
need to experience.
that's okay, yes.
Right. Okay. Um, this whole time that we live in right now is really exciting in a sense that I've never seen on mainstream TV so many big news networks covering the whole UFO phenomena. Not that I'm addicted to that phenomena. I'm not, right? I've got my own things going on, like a lot of other people have, right? But the idea that it's uh, you know it's there right now. There's these unidentified aerial phenomenal objects that that the intelligence services are picking up on, and yeah, the Navy is. Where is this all leading to, and why is it important?
It's important for you all to know your true history, where you came from, and that you have help out there. And that's what it's all leading to. It's all leading to an expansion of consciousness, which is what this is all about ultimately. And once you come to a point in your spiritual evolution where you're ready for this type of information to become mainstream, then it does. And then you'll be ready for full contact. You'll be ready for ships to land and for beings to come and connect with all of you and share with you what it is that they have come to recognize about themselves. They'll give you activations. Just being in the presence of them, people will be healed, and it will afford you the ability to have new and interesting experiences that you could not have if you were still going to remain isolated and basically the majority of people believing in the religions that are prominent on your world.
Right, but I think that there's a lot of people out there who are not ready for that. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to create this reality, but at the same time, I'm just going based on facts that, in my lifetime, and it doesn't bother me, but in my lifetime, that they get, that type of experience that you're describing there is going to happen. I mean, it feels like for me, that's many lifetimes ahead for this planet.
Well, you'll just have to wait and see, but we can see that enough humans are ready for that experience to the point where we would make a prediction that we would feel very comfortable making, that this will happen in your lifetime. And those of you who are ready and who are awake will help the ones for whom this is a big shock to their system and their beliefs. You will be able to nurse them back into full health in terms of their ability to handle the energies and the information that come from full contact.
Yes, but there's a lot of disinformation out there, isn't there? Not just by the government, really, people themselves, and have done a great job of their own disinformation for their need of their ego to want to be famous in this subject, and for their own mental health issues as well. To talk about experiences that they've not had, just for whatever experience of doing that they're getting out of it, and people's ability to discern is difficult for them, because these people come across as very trustworthy. There's a how does this happen? What's the outcome of such an event, like, as you described, when there's so much disinformation out there?
Well, when it happens on a global scale, when it's not just one person's camera phone that caught something, or one person saying this happened to me and they have some sort of platform to say that on, but when it's happening worldwide, when everyone's having their experiences with ET contact, then you don't have to worry about whether someone's telling the truth or not, whether it's all being made up using technology or some other mind control device. It's something ultimately that you all need to have. You all need to have first-hand, personal, face-to-face contact with other beings. And that's what you have been readying yourselves for so many decades now. And now you are ready, and we see it as a very positive thing for everyone on the planet, regardless of what the belief system is.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying, it's almost like a soul growth spurt to have that type of affirmation and that type of truth that this is a reality. And are you kind of saying that this is part of the ascension of humanity's growth to a more um, peaceful coexistence with each other?
Yes, indeed, we are saying that.
But you might also be missing out the part where, or not purposefully, but I'll just include it, that it's a bit of a rough ride to get there.
It has been a rough ride indeed. And it's been a rough ride because ultimately souls want to have experiences that egos don't want to have. And so while the ego would never choose to have a very horrible experience there on earth, the soul would choose that, and it would choose that for its own reasons that an ego and a mind might never be able to understand. And that is really the source of suffering, is not being able to accept something that is happening to you.
Without that type of first contact, how long will it take us to get there on our own, to have that spiritual growth
Well,
by
you've
ourselves?
never been on your own.
On a mass level, I mean, on a mass consciousness that if yeah, no, I know we've never been on our own. I do feel that. But if that presence wasn't there, how long would it have taken us, or how long would it take us to get to maybe a more to have that soul growth jump that we're talking about?
1.2 billion years.
Oh, that's not too bad. I thought he was going to say longer. Right? Okay, 1.2 billion years. Um, wow. Is that long to a soul?
Not at all.
But why do we need that extra push right now? Why is that in our destiny, do you think?
The timing is right in terms of universal energies, in terms of things that are happening all around you. In other words, you have to come along for this ride that the rest of the universe is on. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to be the item that is stuck in the gears that's not letting the whole kaleidoscope move in the way
Okay.
that it moves.
So you're saying that this energy, I'm going to call it energy. I don't know if beings are the right thing, because this energy that's trying that may make contact. Okay, firstly, would we be shocked at actually it's not the truth we thought it was? It's actually far more deeper than what even we've with our best researchers in this field, alternative researchers, I'll pin that, have even imagined it to be.
Well, it's going to be a shock for most people, regardless of what they believe in. It's going to be more than you can imagine right now. But people are having experiences all the time that they do remember. So there are enough people on the planet right now who know that they've had ET contact. And they're the ones who are going to make it easier. They're the ones who will be the go-betweens for humans and extraterrestrials that will make all this possible.
That's very interesting. So you mentioned a cog a minute ago, which is interesting analogy. And what came to my mind as you're sort of saying that was that it's their evolution as much as it's our evolution. So they're on some sort of journey of evolving us, but it's also evolving them. But then some scientists may say, well, why would a race 100 to 1,000 years ahead of us, or races, care so much about us?
Well, because we all understand in the higher realms here that we're all one, that we're all connected, that what happens to you happens to us, and vice versa. And therefore, we need you to evolve in order for that ripple effect to occur, in order for us to fulfill our purpose, our mission, so that we can move forward in our own spiritual evolution.
Is this a mission that you think that you feel that you're on? I mean, where are you? Where is this mission coming from? What books are you reading to tell you this, or what energy? Sorry, I'm just joking there. What energy are you bringing through that's telling you that this is what you need to do?
It's a knowing. It's something that feels like a calling. It feels like it's what we are made to do, what we were born to do. In other words, that's how you would phrase it there.
Where's that coming from? What's the source of that, do you think?
It's coming from source. It's coming from where everything comes from, which is source.
And is there anything beyond that?
Is there a source of source? Yes.
And beyond that?
Yes, but ultimately there is one. There is one source of it all. But for this universe, there's a source, and then there's a source of that source, and so on.
You know, when I just think of the infinite universe, and I don't really know why I'm staying on these questions, but when I think of the infinite universe, it's almost, and I've said this before, it's almost looking at the mind of God in a physical form. That's infinite, or the mind of
Indeed.
source.
Indeed, yes. And that's what this was
Expanding.
all. Yes, it was all created to be that for source, to be something to ponder and something to recognize, something to acknowledge within itself, something to utilize for further creation purposes.
Okay, now very quickly, because we're running out of human time here, but this is so fascinating, and I appreciate you sticking with us. I feel that there's a time of great change coming, and it's not going to be the easiest, regardless of what you're describing here is to come. We are going through that great change right now, aren't we?
Yes, indeed.
And it's going to be a bit bumpy, isn't it?
Well, it already has been. We would say that you've gotten through the worst of it, really, and that everything now is coming to you that's going to serve you so much more because of what you've just gone through with the pandemic, just because all of the summoning that's gone on, all of the people who have been praying and asking for something good to come to you, it has created this avalanche of energies that enough of you just have to open up to so that you can anchor them in and be the change, be the ones who initiate all of it within yourselves, and then you'll have that ripple effect out to the rest of humanity.
Right. Okay. What is the most important message that you might want to leave us with?
You are all love, and you are all there to know yourselves as love, to be love, and to spread love around. And when you're doing that, you feel your best. You feel everything that you want to feel. It's not supposed to be about figuring it out, and it's not supposed to be about getting things done. It's about traveling to the source of everything, which is within you, which is inside your own hearts. And when you realize that and you lead with your hearts and you live your life through your hearts, that's when you feel most fulfilled. That's when everything falls into place and you feel that oneness with all, that unity consciousness, that source energy perspective that you really can hold while still in a physical body. It's just challenging.
Would you say that's maybe, or you could add this to it and tell me if I'm wrong, that as long as it's not hurting anybody or yourself?
Ultimately, everything is coming from love, regardless of how it looks, regardless of whether it seems like you're hurting someone or not. That's still love doing it to love. So that's something to remember as well, is that no matter how it looks, it's there in service to you. And if you're coming from that place of wanting to feel love, wanting to be of unity consciousness, you would never seek to hurt anyone else.
Well, I would just like to thank you very, very much for this interesting conversation.